Imagine watching someone slowly starve to death while surrounded by food. In the early 1900s, that was the reality of diabetes. Children wasted away before their parents' eyes. Their bodies grew weaker, thinner, until eventually they slipped into a coma and never woke up again. Doctors had only one treatment: starvation. Patients were placed on near-fatal diets just to stay alive a little longer. For millions of people, a diagnosis of diabetes was not a disease, it was a death sentence. But then, two young researchers working inside a small laboratory in Canada made a discovery that would change medicine forever. And it began with a desperate idea no one believed would work.
The year was 1921. For centuries, doctors had known diabetes existed, but no one understood how to stop it. Patients suffered from unbearable thirst, rapid weight loss, exhaustion, and dangerously high sugar levels in the blood. No matter how much they ate, their bodies could not use the food properly. Something inside them was failing. Scientists suspected the pancreas might hold the answer, but every attempt to isolate its mysterious internal secretion had failed. Until a young surgeon named Frederick Banting became obsessed with the problem. Banting was not famous. He was not an established scientist. In fact, many experts doubted him.
But he had an idea. What if the pancreas produced a life-saving chemical, one that controlled sugar in the body? And what if that substance could be extracted before digestive enzymes destroyed it? Most scientists dismissed the theory, but Banting refused to let it go. He approached a professor at the University of Toronto. Reluctantly, the professor gave him a tiny laboratory, a few dogs for experiments, and a medical student assistant named Charles Best. That summer, the two young researchers worked endlessly, day after day, night after night. The laboratory smelled of chemicals and exhaustion. They tied off pancreatic ducts in dogs, waited for part of the pancreas to degenerate, and carefully extracted a strange substance from the remaining tissue. Then came the real test. A diabetic dog, weak and dying, was injected with the extract. What happened next stunned everyone in the room. The dog's blood sugar dropped. Its strength began to return. For the first time in history, diabetes appeared controllable. Banting and Best had discovered insulin. But the breakthrough was far from complete. The extract was impure. Some animals became dangerously sick, and many scientists still believed the results were a mistake. The pressure grew intense. If they failed now, the hope would disappear. A biochemist joined the team and worked desperately to purify the extract. Weeks passed. Then, in January 1922, a 14-year-old boy named Leonard Thompson lay dying inside a Toronto hospital. He weighed barely 65 pounds. His body was shutting down from diabetes. Doctors believed he had only days left to live. With permission from his father, the experimental insulin was injected into the boy. The first attempt failed. The extract was still too impure, but the team refused to stop. Collip worked day and night refining the insulin further.
12 days later, they tried again.
This time, something extraordinary happened. Leonard's blood sugar levels dropped dramatically. The dangerous ketones poisoning his body began to disappear. His strength slowly returned. The dying boy opened his eyes and lived. News spread rapidly across the world. What had once been a guaranteed death sentence suddenly became treatable. Hospitals filled with emotional scenes as dying patients recovered before their families' eyes. Children who had been too weak to stand began running again. Parents wept. Doctors stared in disbelief. Insulin transformed medicine almost overnight. Pharmaceutical companies rushed to produce it on a massive scale. Within just a few years, millions of people who would have died from diabetes were surviving. And for the first time in human history, a chronic disease could be controlled with a hormone replacement therapy. The impact was enormous. Insulin became one of the most important medical discoveries ever made. It saved countless lives, and it opened the door to modern endocrinology, hormone research, and future treatments that would reshape medicine forever. Frederick Banting became the youngest person ever awarded the Nobel Prize in Medicine. But perhaps the most extraordinary part of the story was what he chose to do next. Banting believed insulin belonged to the world, not to him, not to profit. The patent for insulin was sold to the University of Toronto for just $1. Because Banting believed no one should own a discovery capable of saving millions of lives. Today, over 100 years later, insulin still keeps millions alive every single day. Every injection, every insulin pump, every child diagnosed with diabetes who now gets the chance to grow up exists because a few people refused to accept that untreatable meant impossible. Sometimes the greatest breakthroughs in history begin in tiny laboratories with exhausted people chasing an idea the world says will never work. And sometimes those ideas end up saving humanity itself.